Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chio Sheppard. I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Student Services here at Texas Southern University. We just want to take opportunity this afternoon to kind of create a space where we can kind of share about some of the things that our country is currently going through. So I'll pass to the next panelist to briefly introduce themselves.
So I'm Dr. Smith, and I'm the director of your University Counseling Center. And so one of the things that we recognize is that whenever we have things that are going on in our nation, such as, we already had the COVID stuff, and now we are being exposed to the racial inequalities that still exist in our country on a grand scale, and how that can really have a negative impact on our overall mental health. And so we just wanted to kind of touch on that and explore what that might look like, but then also how we can heal and grow so that we can be a part of this overall solution.
Perfect. Well, hi everyone. My name is Roberto Regas. I'm with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm an academic advisor on campus. I wanted to be a resource for everyone during this time. Our office is dedicated to creating inclusive spaces to share ideas, to help unpack and process everything, but also to kind of celebrate diversity and connections with our community in regards to social justice issues. We are in the heart and the nexus of social justice causes in Third Ward, and in TSU, we have a rich history with the city.
So I would just be curious from a mental health standpoint, right? When we're already adjusting and coping to COVID, and then we have Aubrey, and we have Brianna, and then we have George, not to mention all the other people prior to them, and then some of the people that we may not have known about, because even in Houston, there were several incidents here in Houston before the George Floyd stuff became part of the national conversation. So what are some things that you may have noticed about yourself, but then also in terms of how you try to cope and kind of grow for that to kind of protect your space?
Well, I know for me, one of the obvious signs that I was experiencing something, because oftentimes you don't know exactly what you're going through or have the proper terminology to associate my sleeping patterns. That was the first sign for me, is just having a lot of restless nights. And when I kind of dug deeper and kind of figure out when did this start happening, it was right after the Aubrey incident, right? So I was able to kind of make that connection. And I think the first step for me was just really acknowledging, hey, like, you are experiencing something. And personally for me, I've always been, that strong person in my family, always been that friend that everyone comes to. So just being comfortable and recognizing, hey, I'm not okay. So just trying to get to that point, particularly as a man, as a Black man.
I love that you said that you got to the point of saying, hey, I'm not okay. And that it's okay to say that you're not okay. Because so often in our culture, we're taught to be strong and tough it out and don't show an emotion and keep everything in. And especially in some spaces, if you show emotion, then you're coming off as aggressive,
right,
or not in control, So I think it's so important to have that conversation and begin to say, like, it's okay, and it's okay that I'm not okay, because that becomes that real transition point from, okay, am I going to continue to internalize things and get worse, or is it going to allow me to start on that process of healing?
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. For myself, I obviously it caused a lot of sleepless nights. It caused a lot of anger. And I think more so the turning point for me, because I noticed a lot of people in my life has started coming to me to kind of say that this is different. Like there's almost like a turning point now in the movement, like something's different, that more people are being aware. I know for my spouse, who's Caucasian, I didn't realize he was so angry. And he finally told me that he was upset because of everything. Like it felt different than before, every other time that it's happened and it's been reported. And I've almost felt bad that I didn't see that anger, because as somebody who's Latinx and immigrant that's lived with a lot of the weight of systemic racism, I carry the weight, but I know I have to move forward and live. And so I've almost felt like bad, like, oh, this is what my weight looks like on someone else that is not used to it. So it was a very wonderful and insightful and deep conversation that we had in regards to what was going on. So, yeah. But more so when it comes to the movement, I just clicked into educator mode. Like I need to do something for our students. So, because there is something that's different about this movement.
Yeah, you're right, and I am hopeful that there is something different, because one of the things that we are seeing is nationally these changes that are occurring in terms of laws and different policies that are then being questioned and looked at. So for me, you know, I have to be honest, like it's been a roller coaster, only because my family is currently in the wake of trying to seek justice for somebody that was close to us who died by police injustice. So having been raw from that, and then Aubrey happens, and I hear it, and I'm just like, I have to shut down. I can't take in the Aubrey stuff. Like I heard about it, I knew it was wrong, but I can't give my energy to that. And then Brianna, and same thing. I'm like, I can't. I have to shut down. I have to like disengage. And then Floyd happened, and you really couldn't disengage. And so it was the pain that's still going through from having lost my friend, coupled with all of these other injustices. And then you have Floyd, and I think that mine more so manifested into anger. And so then for me being biracial, it was this other part as well, to where then it was having family members who essentially are exhibiting racial undertones, overtones, and just kind of questioning, well, what does that, you know, mean for my family dynamic and acceptance of kind of my nuclear family for them. So just a lot of question and confusion and anger, until I kind of decided to, okay, what can I do? So then I went into counselor mode, right? So what can I do? How can I ground myself? How can I recenter myself? So then that way I can be productive and kind of look at what solutions can I then create. And so one of the things that I'm really enjoying about the conversation that we're having right now is we have three different people from three different backgrounds, but seeing how each one of us has addressed this particular issue differently. And I think that that's important, because there is no right or wrong way to heal and grow, to be a part of a solution.
And that's one of the things, a lot of my former students, a lot of young professionals are really reaching out and asking about, you know, how to cope, and, you know, what's the next steps moving forward, you know. And one of the things I really try to stress with them is be mad, be angry, let that emotion out, right? Get that out of your system, but then gather yourself and also be strategic
Yes.
about how we move forward, having a plan. And one of the things I push them to do is do your research, right? Do your research on activism in our community. What movements were effective? Why were they effective? And one of the first steps I had them go look at was the Montgomery bus boycott, right? And to look at how they sustained that momentum.
Yes,
that lasted for 180 days at a time where Blacks didn't have cars,
right,
where the bus system was their sole source of transportation, and they were willing to make those sacrifices to get what they wanted, right? So just trying to get them to think in a different frame, and to do some research and build on what has already been successful.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the things that, that we have conversations with amongst my friends is, okay, how can we create kind of that collective mission? Like, what's our goal?
Mm-hmm.
And so there are so many different things that we know need to be addressed in terms of the inequalities and injustices. It's like, where do we begin? And then it's like, we're kind of all over the place.
Right.
So it doesn't really allow sometimes for us to be effective in creating that change. I know in my house, we talked about, okay, what is our role? You've heard my background noise, my little 7-month-old. So clearly, having a 7-month-old, we're not out there protesting. Like it's just not feasible for my family to play that role. So then it's, what does that role look like? And that's one of the things that I love about TSU and all the bright minds that come out of there is there's so many avenues that can take. So is it somebody who is a lawyer and Thurgood Marshall decides they want to practice civil law? Is it, one of our, students who decides, you know what, I want to run for office and create those changes? Because earlier this week, which I think a lot of people don't recognize, and I think that COVID created this perfect storm for this change that we're seeing in these policies, is things are virtual. So earlier this week, I listened to the Harris County Commissioner's Court, which, again, working full time with kids, there's no way I'd be able to go in person and watch the Commissioner's Court. But if it's online, you can have it playing in the background. And it was very interesting to listen to the commissioners and Judge Hidalgo's take on what things might need to be changed in terms of police reform and accountability. And we have the opportunity in those instances to look at the agenda beforehand and then applied requests to speak and allow our voice to be heard in those ways in terms of, hey, I see this is on the agenda, I agree with it, great, or we need to look at it from a different perspective. But then to also, from that, I heard how they were creating solutions as people were voicing their concerns. And so I think that when we see that, it creates that sense of power. Mm-hmm. It lets us know that our voices do have power. We just have to learn how to navigate a system and advocate for ourselves appropriately.
Yeah, and I think that I've seen a lot of collaborations and a lot of collaborative spirit right now in regards to the movement, especially intergenerational, because a lot of this is because of the virtual space that many of us never experienced. So people I know people that are a lot older that are contacting me or students that I've spoken to, like, what can I do? I don't do Instagram. Like, how can I take part virtually? And I think that students, if anything, I think everyone should be aware that this has been it's come to a boiling point, that it's tipped over because everything's so virtual, everything is recorded now. This last tragedy was recorded from 7, 8, 10 different angles. Like, there's no way to put blinders on at this moment and to explain things away. So I think this is a good opportunity. And also, since everything's online, and again, the movement's a little different now, that people are putting out all these statements. It's in the virtual space. So now we can hold people accountable and start bringing back effective change, you know?
And that's what I have a little bit of trepidation about, is how we are now being bombarded with all these statements. And I don't want to sound insensitive or unappreciative.
I'll say it's contradictory to what they have done historically.
Thank you.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
I need action. I need some action plans, right? A statement, yeah, that's cool on the surface, but how do we, again, Dr. Smith, how do we hold you accountable? And I want to look back at something that you said that kind of hit a chord, because I had a student, a former student who's a young professional in student affairs. He's only been in the field for about 2 years. And he called me and he was very, very distraught and questioning his role in this movement, right? And he wasn't sure that higher education was the place for him. He was ready to take a whole different path and leave the profession. But I kind of explained to him what you said, right? Everyone has a role in this movement. Everybody can't be on the front line, but that doesn't make you less effective,
right?
And that doesn't make your impact any smaller, right? So kind of talking to him through that, he felt a lot better. But I think probably a lot of students are having that internal battle.
And here's the thing though, right? So one, like I had that same conversation with my girlfriend and, about what my role is. And I was like, I love being at TSU. And part of my role is as a counselor, as a director of the counseling center, we can help to create conversations I think that it's important for us to learn how to manage our emotions. So then that way we're able to deliver the message that we want in a clear, concise manner. And that's one of the things that I can contribute to that. But when we look at the TSU sit-ins, those were college students.
Yeah.
And so I think that sometimes we look at things on this big scale, like, oh, if I can't do Z, then I can't do A. But actually A and all the other letters in between are just as important and just as essential. And so I think we have to get out of this mind frame of go big or go home. When the reality of it is, what is that small little thing that I can do that can then make an impact? I recognize that, I'm not out here making humongous waves, but I do recognize that I'm making ripples, and those ripples that I make in other people's lives are going to create ripples in other people's lives, and so on and so forth. And so it's looking at, okay, what can I do? So is it something as simple as I'm going to register to vote, but not only am I going to register to vote, I'm going to make the people that are in office accountable. I'm going to get up and speak, and I'm going to check for receipts. I'm going to look at their voting record. You know what I mean? All of those things that's simple. Like, it's tedious work to pull somebody's voting history, but also poignant in terms of helping to keep them accountable.
It's true. That's amazing advice, and I always try to explain it to students. I just had a discussion with a couple of them recently, that we were all 20 before, and we've all had that sense of being invincible and wanting to do big swooping changes. And I think that's just a process that every student has to go through. But our advice as professionals is just to help them do these little things and find their place in the movement, because I always equate, when you're younger, impulsive, and you want to see results, and if you don't see them, you feel like it's a failure. So I think just trying to discuss with students, like, there are so many roles to play, and it's not a simple addition. It's a long math problem, if you want to put it that way.
And I like that you said in terms of it's not going to be an overnight change, which is going to be so essential to remember as things kind of settle a little bit, once people start going back to work and we're not being bombarded by this message of social injustice. Because we know it's there.
Right.
It's just one thing when it's just at the forefront. And so it's important to recognize that, yes, I think that these swooping changes have been able to occur because everybody's sitting at home. Well, not everybody, but you know what I mean? Like a large portion of our country is sitting at home. And so they know, like, oh, all eyes are literally on us. Let's make some changes really quickly because this is, at the forefront. But then recognizing after that happens to continue to keep persisting and not giving up or getting frustrated and not continuing to keep people accountable, because it's a long-term change. The systematic racism that occurs and the structures that occur to create those racial inequities did not happen overnight. And unfortunately, they're not going to be torn down and repaired overnight.
This country is famous for reinventing what that racism looks like. Mm-hmm. We come up, we think we make an advancement, and they'll just covertly adapt and adjust it and make it look like something totally different.
Yeah.
So we have to stay on our toes, be aware, and be educated.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. And especially in realizing how technology also works, that there's a 24-hour news cycle. So if you don't see it on the front headlines in the first 5 minutes of a newscast, don't feel discouraged. Keep doing the work. Mm-hmm. Like, because the world is going to go on to maybe the second COVID outbreak or whatever big thing's going to happen. So it's something to kind of keep students motivated and not feel like, have them feel that their movement that they're investing in is actually fruitful and they're learning. And also as students, I want them to learn from it and be those ages of change. I mean, they're the young ones. They're the ones with all the energy, all the technology, and all the vigor right now. So,
and one of the things that I sometimes talk to the students about when I'm working with them is you didn't come in as a freshman and then automatically become a senior. And so it's about being consistent in terms of continuing to take all of those steps to follow it through to the end. So as we're coming up on our time, what would be kind of a takeaway that you would want students to get from this conversation we've been able to have today?
Mr. Sheppard.
Again, I know one of the emotions that I felt going through all this was a sense of helplessness. But that only lasts for a moment, because I realized, particularly as not only people of color, but as Black people, the tremendous buying power that we have, right? And I just want to figure out. I know the color of green, money, crosses all ethnic and racial lines, right? So how do we instill that into our students? How do we instill that into our community? That financial literacy piece, right? Because I just think back when I grew up, a lot of the mom and pop stores in my community were Black owned. You look in there now, they're not. Most of our gas stations in my hometown are ran by Middle Eastern descendants, right? Nothing is Black owned in our community no more. And a lot of these store owners don't live in our community. They don't give back to our community, but yet we support them relentlessly without question, right? So taking this movement to an economic space, how do we tighten up our dollars and be more selective of who we support financially? Because
ultimately that helps to create economic freedom.
Absolutely.
And through that economic freedom, it creates more opportunities, not just for us, but then our children and our children's children as well, and being able to be people to be able to sit at the table and be like, no, you got to listen to me because we have that money behind us.
So I want our students to really get into that mind frame of how do we save ourselves? Because I tell students all the time, no one's coming to save you. There's not going to be someone swooping in and going to rescue you, right? So how do we create this mindset for our students to to create opportunities for themselves and their community.
Definitely. For myself, to piggyback on what you said, Mr. Sheppard, the aspect of community is so important. I think for me, the biggest takeaway would be to turn it towards forward momentum and collectively collaborate with your community. Starts with your family, starts with your school. When we all come back to campus in the fall, we're all going to be connected, and let's work together and really strive with some unity to really move the message and the narrative forward. And also within the community, you know, Black entrepreneurs, I mean, there's the community supporting each other, but also everyone's eyes are on the community. So everyone that's willing to help, let's just selectively figure out who our allies are and work together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, find that support, because if one person's screaming injustice, it's not as effective as a million people. It makes change, but there's a more immediate and impactful change. So finding those allies, working together as a campus, working together with your organizations, with the community, it's a must right now.
I like what you said in terms of community, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that we pretty consistently at the Counseling Center, we talk to our students about is, who is your support network, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because those are then the ones that are going to be able to have your back, but then also help to keep you accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was in my anger stage of this, you know, process, talking to my friends, they're like keeping me accountable, helping me to, you know, reminding me, no, you need to redirect. Let's put your energy elsewhere. Like, how is that helping? And so to that point, that's what we have to ask ourselves. Are the emotions that I'm exhibiting or experiencing, is it helping me get to the next stage? Mm-hmm. Right? And how can I properly translate this anger that I'm having into a constructive way? I tell my daughter all the time, there's nothing wrong with being angry. Anger is a normal emotion. It's what you do with it. Mm-hmm. So then how are you choosing to allow that anger to manifest positively? Yep. So I feel that part of being able to sustain the movement, it starts within us, and being able to recognize, how can I maintain my peace? How can I maintain my balance? How can I articulate myself in a manner that's going to allow me to be effective and efficient in this movement? And again, that's fluid, so it can change, you know, so maybe journaling one day works, and then another day you need to, you know, listen to some James Brown, you know, so whatever it might be, like, do that and give yourself that space that's needed to decompress, to disengage when you need to, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to kind of continue to go on without breaking, essentially.
Right.
And that's the goal.
So the University Counseling Center is always here for our students. All you have to do is call us, 713-313-7804, and we'll be able to set you up with an appointment if you need to process any of the feelings or emotions that you're going through. And we look forward to always continuing to support you on your journey. So I guess with that being said, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we hope that that you found this valuable. Be sure to check out all of our pages, because we will have relevant information, not only as it relates to racial inequalities, but then also as it relates to poignant TSU information.
All righty, it's been a pleasure. Everyone remain safe.
All right, take care, everybody.
Take care, y'all. Take care of each other.